Good Shabbos, everyone, and good morning. Yesterday, of course, was September 11th, and it's hard to ignore that date, or maybe you can. It's hard to believe it was 19 years ago, so there's a whole generation for whom September 11th is just the day after September 10th and the day before September 12th. But not for me. There was so many profound moments in our lives. I know exactly where I was when I heard that awful news. I felt like the fourth child at the Seder, the one who doesn't even know how to ask the question. And unlike that fortunate child, my ignorance stemmed not from innocence, but from shock. This week, this morning, this Shabbat, we read a double Torah portion, Nitzavim and Vayelech. In our first parsha, Nitzavim, the entire community comes together. And the Torah makes it clear that everyone means men, women, children, from the mightiest to the most humble. And the word Nitzavim means standing. You are all standing here together. The second Torah portion of Vayelech means, and he went forth. What an interesting and funny juxtaposition. Are we standing still, or are we moving forward? When those airplanes hit the World Trade Center, when United Flight 93 went down, we were stuck in that moment. We couldn't move. It was incomprehensible. Yet time moves relentlessly forward. So as individuals, as a community, and as a country, we went forth. We went forth reminded, armed with the terrible knowledge. As a philosopher, Franz Kafka wrote once, the meaning of life is that it does end, and sometimes way too soon. So many innocent lives were cut short on that horrible day by evil men. My colleague, Rabbi Bani Koppel, asks, we who survived, who are here today, who are blessed with the gift of life, what are we doing with that blessing? In his book, Lessons for Living, Rabbi Sidney Greenberg cites a study by psychologist William Marston, who asked 300 people this brief question: what do you have to live for? He found that 94% of his respondents were simply enduring the present while they waited for the future. I hear that often during this pandemic. I'm just waiting for all of this to end. Well, the people who responded to that question, what do you have to live for, said very similar things. They said they were waiting for something to happen, waiting for the right man or the right woman, waiting for children to grow up and leave the home, waiting to pay off the mortgage, waiting for a vacation, waiting for retirement, waiting to get involved in the community, waiting to learn some new skill or hobby. 94% of us are waiting while each new day passes us by. Yet 100% of us are simply running out of time. My friends, Rosh Hashanah is now just 1 week away. It's hard to believe. And my question this morning as we get ready for this all-important time of year is, what are we waiting for? Yes, these high holidays will be very different than any we've ever had, but they are still Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. They're still about our confrontation with our own mortality before God. Our own mortality. The words of the Machzor, the High Holiday Prayer Book, will still be recited. Unatan and Tokef will still be read. Who shall live and who shall die? Who in the fullness of years and who before? Who by fire and who by wild beasts? And perhaps these words have never been more meaningful. Our days are indeed, like the psalmist writes, like a passing shadow. The story is told of a Talmud professor who asked the student hurrying by, where are you running to? I'm rushing home to look over the High Holiday Prayer Book, the Machzor, before I have to lead services in my congregation, replied the student, catching his breath. The prayer book hasn't changed since last year, said the professor, but perhaps you have. Instead, go home and look yourself over. This is our task. For these next few remaining days of this Jewish year, the meaning of life is that it ends. And we have one more week to consider, what is the meaning of our lives? If our lives ended tomorrow, what would we regret most? What changes would we wish we had made? What are we waiting for? Even with the confines of this pandemic, There are many opportunities to earn the greatest honorific in the Jewish tradition. He or she was a mensch. This past week, I had the honor and the tragedy of laying to rest our friend Josh Roberts. And perhaps some of you knew him. He was a beautiful 59-year-old man. His life was cut way too short by the tragic consequences of cancer. And what I was reminded of earlier this week is that Josh was truly a mensch. And as I sat with his family in their despair, I was reminded again and again and again, it had little to do with his career, it had all to do with his family. It was a reminder to me, what am I waiting for? That is our charge today for all of us as Jews as we prepare for this very unusual, but perhaps most important Rosh Hashanah we will ever experience in our lifetime. Shana Tova to all of us, and may we be blessed with a good year, and may all of us be blessed with the strength